The radiation alarm pierced the silence of the archaeological excavation with an electronic scream that made Marcus Webb's blood run cold. 3 sharp tones repeated at 2-second intervals. Level 5. Lethal exposure in less than 8 minutes. Above them, the star Kepler 4142 had awakened from a 3-century slumber with primitive fury. The solar storm sweeping across the surface of planet Tharos 9 was not accounted for in any predictive model. In any spectral analysis from the last 500 years of astronomical observation, it was as if the star itself had decided at that precise moment to remind the mortal invaders of their insignificance. Marcus looked at the sky through the protective visor of his helmet. Even filtered by layers of reinforced polymer, the auroras caused by the storm painted the horizon with crimson and violet streaks that rippled like furious serpents. Beautiful, deadly, indifferent. 47 people. That was the number flashing on the panel of his left arm. 47 lives under his direct responsibility, spread across the 3 levels of the excavation. Archaeologists from the Interstellar University of Oxford, remote sensing technicians, xenolinguistics specialists. Most were no older than 30. Some had never left Earth before this mission. Dr. Yuki Tanaka appeared, running between the containment scaffolding, his white suit covered in the orange dust that characterized Tharos 9. He was the expedition's scientific leader, a xenoarchaeologist who had dedicated 20 years of his life to studying the founder races. 3 weeks ago, when they discovered the temple's lower chamber, Marcus had seen him cry for the first time. Now Tanaka's eyes were wide, with a primal fear that no academic training could suppress. "Marcus, the transports. They won't be able to take off with this magnetic interference." The scientist's voice echoed, distorted by the comms. "The pilots say the navigation systems are completely blind." Marcus already knew. He had checked 3 times in the last 90 seconds. The small reconnaissance vessels that had brought them from the Kepler Alpha orbital station, 200,000 kilometers away, were designed for calm atmospheres, not for the electronic equivalent of a Category 6 hurricane. 6.5 minutes. He spun on his heels and ran towards the temple. His feet kicked up clouds of dust with each stride, and Tharos 9's 0.7 g gravity allowed him to cover 3 meters per thrust. The temple loomed ahead like an ossified finger pointing to the sky. According to Tanaka, it had been built over 10,000 years ago by the First Order of the Cathani, one of the 5 races that founded the Council of Elders. The structure was made of a crystalline material that no human spectrometer could accurately identify. It looked like stone, but resonated like metal when touched. 12-meter-thick walls, impervious to scanners, impervious to radiation, impervious to everything. Marcus activated the general comms. "Attention, all teams. Code Red Delta. Immediate rendezvous at the Central Temple. Repeat, immediate rendezvous at the Central Temple. Bring only your emergency kits. You have 4 minutes." Responses began to flood in, overlapping voices charged with barely contained panic. Lieutenant Sarah O'Connor, head of security, was the first to confirm. Her 12-person team was already en route. Dr. Chen Patel, a biologist specializing in extremophile life forms, reported that 3 members of her group were on the lower level and would need assistance to ascend with their analysis equipment. "Leave the equipment." Marcus cut in, more sharply than he intended. "Nothing but the essentials? Move." Tanaka caught up with him at the temple entrance. The scientist placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder, squeezing hard enough to be felt through the layers of thermal insulation. "Marcus, do you understand what this place represents?" His voice trembled. "There are only 17 First-Order temples in the entire known galaxy. 17. This is the best preserved. The inscriptions inside predate Terran cuneiform writing by 6 millennia. The Council of Elders designated this planet as Omega-class sacred heritage. We shouldn't even be here without direct Guardian supervision." Marcus knew all of this. He also knew they had obtained special authorization from the Council's Archaeological Exploration Subcommittee after 2 years of diplomatic negotiations. He knew that violating any protocol could result in humanity's permanent banishment from the Orion Arm trade routes. He knew Tanaka was right in every word, but he also knew that in 5 minutes, 47 people would start to die. "Yuki," he said, forcing calm into his voice, "how thick do you estimate the ground above the lower chamber to be?" Tanaka blinked, confused by the sudden change of subject. "About 15 meters." "Why?" Marcus didn't answer. He was already running towards the small depot where they stored drilling equipment. His hands worked on autopilot, arranging charges of controlled density excavation explosives. They were designed to fragment rock without creating excessive fragmentation. 12 cartridges, it would be enough. "Wait." Tanaka's voice was different now, sharper. "Marcus, no. You can't be thinking of 47 people, Yuki." Marcus didn't look back as he checked the detonators. 5 minutes. "You don't understand," Tanaka was almost shouting. "The Council won't see this as survival. To them, this temple is... Marcus, it's like you're proposing to bomb the Sistine Chapel. It's like dynamiting the pyramids of Giza. You'll be executed. All of us will be." The first people began to arrive. Sarah O'Connor and her security team, followed by smaller groups of scientists who ran with the disarray of those rarely needing to run for their lives. Pale faces behind visors, eyes searching for answers. Marcus wasn't sure he could provide. 3 minutes. He hefted the explosives and looked Tanaka directly in the eye. "You're right about everything, but I can't let these people die because of a building, no matter how sacred it is." "It's not a building," Tanaka's voice cracked. "It's the memory of an entire civilization. It's an empty tomb," Marcus interrupted, surprising himself with the harshness of his own words. "The Cathani have been extinct for 6,000 years. This temple is beautiful. It's important. But it doesn't breathe. It doesn't dream. It doesn't have a family waiting at home." He walked to the temple entrance and looked at the gathered group. 41 people. 6 were missing. 2.5 minutes. There wouldn't be time to wait. Sarah understood what he was about to do. She always understood. 10 years of missions together forged that kind of synchronicity. "Chief Engineer Webb," she said, formalizing the moment so it would be recorded on all suit audio logs. "By my authority as security officer of this expedition, I order you take all necessary measures to preserve human lives. Understood?" Marcus nodded. She had just taken on half the legal responsibility, dividing the crime. Typical of Sarah. "Understood, Lieutenant." He began to descend into the lower chamber. The steps were too wide for human feet, made for a larger species. Hieroglyphs glowed faintly on the walls, some kind of fossilized bioluminescence. that scientists hadn't yet adequately explained. At the bottom, the chamber opened into a space the size of a cathedral. An empty altar dominated the center. Empty, but not forgotten. Marcus worked quickly. He placed the explosives in a circular pattern on the chamber ceiling, connecting the detonators in series. His hands didn't tremble. There was no time for doubt. When he emerged, all 47 were present. Dr. Chen Patel and her team had arrived last, breathless but alive. 1 minute. Everyone to the lower chamber. Now, stay close to the altar. Cover your heads when I give the signal. They descended in a disordered line. Some were crying. Tanaka was among them, his face a mask of silent agony. Marcus was the last to descend, holding the detonator. The radiation was now so intense that his suit readings emitted a constant, alarming beep. 20 seconds until lethal exposure. 10. Marcus pressed the button. The explosion was deafening, even through layers of rock. The ground shook. Dust and crystal fragments rained from the ceiling. Someone screamed. Then, with a roar that sounded like the end of the world, 15 meters of soil and rock collapsed into the chamber, blocking the entrance and creating a thick, uneven cover above their heads. For 10 seconds, everything was darkness and chaos. Then, the emergency lights on the suits began to flicker on one by one. 47 small suns in a tomb that was never meant to house life. Marcus checked the radiation meter. Levels were dropping, still dangerous, but no longer lethal. The soil and debris were acting as an improvised shield. They would survive. But as Marcus looked at the faces around him, at Tanaka, who had sat on the ground with his head in his hands, at Sarah, who watched him with an expression that mixed relief and fear, he knew with absolute certainty that he had just crossed a line from which there would be no return. Outside, the solar storm would continue for another 6 hours. Inside, the violated temple, 47 humans breathed, and one man wondered if he had saved their lives only to condemn them to something worse. The Council's custody vessel arrived 18 hours after the solar storm finally calmed. Marcus watched its approach through small cracks they had opened in the debris to allow air circulation. A black shape against the orange sky of Tharos 9, moving with the unnatural precision of something that did not rely on organic pilots. It was not a warship. It was something worse, a judicial vessel, recognizable by the silver pentagon-shaped markings that decorated its fuselage. Each vertex represented one of the 5 members of the Council of Elders: light, stone, smoke, water, fire. The primordial elements that, according to the cosmology of the founder races, gave rise to all consciousness in the galaxy. Marcus had never seen a judicial vessel in person. Few humans had. In 3 centuries of presence on the galactic stage, humanity had maintained an almost impeccable record of compliance with Council laws. Minor commercial infractions, small territorial disputes, nothing that warranted the direct attention of the Elders. Until now. Sarah O'Connor was beside him, observing the same crack. "They took less than a day," she murmured, "from the incident to the arrival of the judges. How do they move so fast?" Marcus shook his head. The Council held a monopoly on Omega-class space warp technology, capable of traversing the galaxy in a matter of days. Humans still relied on Beta-class engines, good for medium interstellar distances, but pathetic compared to what civilizations with 10,000 years of technological advancement could build. "They're signaling," Tanaka announced, consulting a portable tablet he had managed to retrieve from the debris. Official communication pattern. They want us to identify the primary responsible party for the violation. Silence descended upon the chamber like a heavy shroud. 47 people had survived the radiation. 47 people who knew exactly who the council was looking for. Marcus took a deep breath. I will. No. Dr. Chen Patel's voice cut through the air. She was a small woman, no more than 5 feet 1 inch tall, but her presence filled spaces. We all participated in this decision. I voted in favor. Tanaka voted in favor. Sarah voted in favor. It was 32 to 15. But I held the detonator, Marcus replied. I did the calculations. I positioned the explosives. Under council, law, intent, and execution are inseparable. The responsibility is mine. Tanaka approached. His face was more aged than 18 hours ago. New furrows formed around his eyes, as if gravity had increased just for him. Marcus, you need to understand something about the council. His words came out slow, measured. They don't think like us. 10,000 years of absolute supremacy. It changes a civilization. They don't see nuances. They don't see context. For them, there is only law and violation. And when the violation involves Omega-class sacred heritage, the penalty is always the same. What penalty? Sarah asked, though her tone suggested she already knew. Public dissolution, Tanaka replied. Broadcast to all council worlds. It's called a lesson by example. The last time it was applied, 150 years ago, it was against a Vryn merchant who had tried to smuggle artifacts from an ancestral crypt. They disintegrated him, atom by atom in slow motion. It took 3 hours. Marcus felt his stomach clench, but kept his face neutral. Then it's better that it's just one of us, not 47. The vessel landed 100 meters north of the temple. Through the cracks, Marcus could see figures emerging from the boarding ramp. They were not humanoids. One appeared to be made of translucent liquid crystal that constantly shifted shape. Another was a pulsating sphere of light, floating 2 meters off the ground. The third left a trail of silvery smoke that slowly dissipated. The council enforcers, biological automatons created specifically to apply the Elder's justice, without emotions, without hesitation, without mercy. Marcus climbed the debris towards the surface. Sarah followed him immediately, and then Chen Patel, and then others. Within seconds, all 47 were ascending, a silent and determined human current. No, Marcus said, turning around. Stay here. This isn't a democracy. It's a direct order. With all due respect, Chief Engineer, Sarah replied. Go to hell. They emerged together into the orange light of Tharos Niner's twilight. The enforcers were already waiting, forming a perfect semicircle. The sphere of light pulsed once, and a voice filled the air around them. It came from no specific direction. It was simply present, vibrating through their bones. Humans of Archaeological Expedition, designation, Terra Kepler 442 Alpha. The Council of Elders acknowledges the violation of Omega-class sacred heritage. Identify the primary executor. Marcus stepped forward. I am Marcus Webb, Chief Engineer of this expedition. The responsibility is entirely mine. The sphere pulsed again. Acknowledged. Marcus Webb, you are formally charged with desecration of ancestral heritage. You will be transported to the Quinquennial Judgment Station in the Crimson Nebula. There, the Council of Elders will decide your fate. You are entitled to diplomatic representation from your species. Wait. Tanaka stepped forward. The desecration was committed to prevent loss of life. 47 lives. This should be considered an extenuating circumstance under the extreme necessity clause of the unified law. The liquid crystal being undulated, its form reorganizing into something that could be interpreted as a head, turning. The unified law does not recognize the equivalence between organic life and ancestral heritage. Ancestral heritage is eternal. Organic life is temporary. The argument is logically flawed. Sarah clenched her fists. Are you saying an empty building is worth more than 47 living people? We are not authorized to interpret the law, the voice replied. Only to apply it. Marcus Webb, you will come with us now. Resistance will result in the expansion of charges to the entire expedition. Marcus looked at his companions. He saw fear, yes, but also anger. A cold, calculated anger that he recognized. It was the same anger that had driven humanity through world wars, pandemics, near extinctions, the anger of a species that refused to accept its end quietly. I will go, he said, but I want my lawyers to have full access to me, and I want the trial to be publicly broadcast, as the unified law guarantees. Your rights will be respected, the sphere confirmed. They took him to the vessel. The interior was as sterile as Marcus had imagined. White corridors that seemed to stretch infinitely, illuminated by a light source that cast no shadows. His cell was a 3-meter diameter, containment sphere, floating in the center of a larger chamber. Inside the sphere, gravity was adjusted to Earth standard 1G, a small concession to the comfort of a prisoner whom the Council had already practically judged guilty. Marcus floated to the center of the sphere and sat in a lotus position. There was no furniture, no windows, only the almost imperceptible hum of the containment fields and his own thoughts. The journey would take 6 days. 6 days for humanity to process what had happened. 6 days for Terran diplomats to mount a defense Marcus suspected would be useless. 6 days for him to make peace with a simple truth. He had saved 47 lives at the cost of his own. Was it worth it? The question echoed in his mind like a mantra. He thought of his younger sister, Eleanor, who had probably already received the news. He thought of his 4-year-old nephew, who called him Uncle Space. He thought of the afternoons they spent fixing broken equipment together, small hands imitating his movements with adorable seriousness. Yes, it was worth it. On the 3rd day, the containment sphere became transparent. Marcus could see the space around the vessel. Stars moved in impossible patterns as the Omega-class warp drive distorted the very geometry of space-time. Streaks of light stretched and compressed, creating a hypnotic kaleidoscope that seemed to violate the fundamental laws of physics. Beauty built on principles that humanity would still take centuries to fully comprehend. On the 5th day, he saw the Judgment Station for the first time. It floated in the heart of the Crimson Nebula, a structure that defied any sense of scale. 5 gigantic pyramids pointing in different directions, each the size of a small moon, connected by walkways of pure energy. At the center, where the 5 pyramids almost touched, a sphere of purple light pulsed with a rhythm that seemed ancient beyond comprehension. The Judgment Chamber, the heart of the Council's power. When the vessel docked, Marcus was transferred into a formal procession. Enforcers from 10 different species formed a corridor of inverse honor. Honor for the law, dishonor for those who violated it. They walked in silence through corridors that echoed with the footsteps of 10,000 years of history. Finally, the chamber doors opened. Marcus Webb, a 38-year-old human engineer, son of high school teachers from rural Montana, entered the hall where entire civilizations had been judged and condemned, where the fates of planets were decided with the coldness of a mathematical equation. Before him, the 5 thrones of the Council of Elders rose like mountains of absolute authority, each occupied by a presence that seemed more concept than living being. And all eyes, or sensory equivalents in the galaxy, were turned towards him. The trial was about to begin. The judgment chamber did not adhere to conventional laws of architecture. The walls curved at angles that made Marcus's eyes ache when he tried to focus on them directly. The ceiling was either too high or too low, depending on where he looked, as if space itself couldn't decide its own dimensions. Later, he would discover that the chamber existed partially in a dimensional fold, allowing millions of spectators across the galaxy to observe without the physical structure needing to accommodate them. But at that moment, Marcus could only focus on the 5 thrones. The Elder of Light occupied the throne to the left. It was not a being of fixed form, but a presence that radiated across all frequencies of the electromagnetic spectrum. When Marcus looked directly, he saw only an unbearable brilliance. When he averted his gaze slightly, he perceived patterns within the glow, fractal structures of impossible complexity that seemed to contain entire libraries of knowledge. The Elder of Stone was a mass of living rock, crystals that continuously grew and reconfigured themselves. Eyes that could be gems or bioluminescent sensors opened and closed on its surface. Every movement produced a sound of grinding mountains, ancient and inevitable. The Elder of Smoke had no defined form. It was a silvery mist that floated and dispersed, recollecting into patterns that suggested faces, hands, geometric shapes. Within the smoke, Marcus occasionally saw flashes of color, like thoughts becoming partially visible. The Elder of Water was a sphere of suspended liquid, contained by nothing but its own will. Currents flowed through it in intricate patterns, and sometimes Marcus could swear he saw reflections of distant places on its surface, as if the sphere were a window to 1,000 worlds simultaneously. The Elder of Fire was the most unsettling. Flames that burned nothing, that existed in a state of perpetual combustion without consuming fuel. The flames danced in colors that had no name in any human language, and its mere presence made the air vibrate with heat that Marcus could feel even through the containment field surrounding him. A 6th being was present, floating between Marcus and the thrones. This one was smaller, more comprehensible. A humanoid form made of something that looked like living glass, transparent yet solid. The Herald of the Council, responsible for formalizing the accusations and conducting the proceedings. The Herald raised something that could have been an arm. The quinquennial judgment chamber is now in session. Let the galactic records bear witness. Let the stars be witnesses. Let eternity itself be witness. The Herald's voice echoed with harmonics that made Marcus's bones vibrate. It wasn't unpleasant, just profoundly unnatural. Marcus Webb of Earth, you are accused of desecration of ancestral heritage, violation of Omega-class sacred heritage, and intentional destruction of a protected artifact under the first law of preservation. How do you plead? Marcus felt the weight of billions of eyes upon him. The broadcast was being sent to every civilized world in the galaxy. Earth was watching. His family was watching. The people he had saved were watching. He took a deep breath. I plead responsible for the acts described, but not guilty of a crime. A murmur swept through the chamber. The odor of smoke condensed slightly, forming something that could be interpreted as interest. Explain your distinction, the herald commanded. I destroyed the temple to save 47 lives from lethal radiation. Under the circumstances, there was no alternative. The unified law recognizes extreme necessity as a legitimate defense when lives are in immediate danger. The Elder of Light pulsed once. When it spoke, its voice was like hearing stars converse, each word carrying the weight of eons. The law of extreme necessity applies only when equivalent values are in conflict. You destroyed 10,000-year-old heritage to preserve organisms with a life expectancy of less than a century. The values are not equivalent. Marcus felt the trap closing. With all due respect to the Council, who decides the value of a life? The Elder of Stone replied, its voice like grinding rocks. Value is objective. It is measured in permanence, in impact through time, in contribution to collective knowledge. The Cathani Temple existed for 10 millennia. It would exist for 10 more, for 100, for 1,000. Your 47 lives? Mere instants. Sparks that extinguish in a galactic blink. But those sparks feel, Marcus counter-argued. They think. They love. They create meaning in a universe that without consciousness would just be atoms randomly rearranging themselves. The temple was beautiful. It was important, but it was empty. It was a vessel without content. Those 47 people were replaceable. The Elder of Water interrupted, its voice like waves breaking on distant shores. Earth has billions of humans. The loss of 47 would be statistically irrelevant. But there are only 17 First-Order temples. The destruction of one represents a loss of approximately 6% of all remaining Cathani heritage. Mathematically, your action was unsustainable. Marcus was beginning to understand. It wasn't about morality for them. It was about calculation, about a cold mathematics where the value of everything could be quantified, compared, hierarchized. So for you, he said slowly, 47 human lives combined are worth less than 6% of a set of buildings. The Elder of Fire roared to life, its flames intensifying. You distort the question with emotional language. We do not evaluate in the primitive sense you imply. We calculate. Ancestral heritage represents accumulated knowledge, lost techniques, perspectives of extinct civilizations. Each temple is a time capsule, a direct link to the founders of our galactic order. Its destruction is an amputation of collective memory. And memory, Marcus said, finding strength in his own conviction, is it worth more than life? Memory is what separates civilization from chaos, the Elder of Light replied. Without memory, without a record of what came before, each generation would repeat the same mistakes. Progress would be impossible. Species would be condemned to eternal cycles of discovery and oblivion. The temples are not just stones. They are repositories of wisdom that your species could not comprehend in 1,000 years of study. At that moment, the chamber doors opened again. 2 humans entered, wearing Earth's formal, diplomatic attire. Marcus recognized the first, Ambassador Chen, humanity's senior representative to the Council. The second was a woman he didn't know, wearing the insignia of a certified galactic advocate. The herald gestured, allowing them to approach. The advocate positioned herself beside Marcus, her face a professional mask of neutrality. "Honorable members of the Council," she began, her voice firm despite the situation. "I am Dr. Amara Okafor, representing the accused under the unified law. I would like to present extenuating evidence that the Council may not have fully considered." The Elder of Smoke undulated. "Proceed." At the time of Engineer Webb's decision, the survival expectancy for the 47 expedition members was 0% without immediate intervention. Orbital transport systems were non-operational due to the solar storm. Surface radiation was at lethal levels. The temple structure offered the only viable protection within a 200-kilometer radius. She projected holograms into the air, showing radiation readings, particle trajectory simulations, material density analyses. It was an impeccable presentation, built by entire teams working non-stop since the incident was reported. Furthermore, Okafor continued, Earth has already initiated plans for the temple's complete reconstruction. We will use quantum scanners to map every fragment, every molecule. We will hire the best archaeologists from 50 species. The temple will be restored to its original state with 99.9% accuracy. The Elder of Stone produced a sound that could have been a laugh or a distant earthquake. You propose to replace the original with a replica and expect that to satisfy the law. Reparation within the capabilities of the offending species is proposed. Okafor replied, "It is an established principle in Council jurisprudence." For accidental damage, the Elder of Water counter-argued. Not for intentional destruction. Engineer Webb had time to deliberate. He made a conscious choice. This is not an accident, it is a decision. Marcus watched the defense strategy crumble in real time. Okafor was fighting bravely, but it was like using logic against an avalanche. The Council had already decided. This trial was merely theater, a ritual to maintain the appearance of justice. "May I speak?" Marcus asked. The herald hesitated, then nodded. Marcus turned to face the 5 elders directly. "You are right about one thing. I had time to deliberate, perhaps 2 minutes. In that time, I weighed the values. I considered the consequences, and even knowing I would be here, even knowing I would be judged for destroying something sacred, I would make the same choice, 1,000 times over." He took a step forward, ignoring the containment fields that began to hum a warning. "Because you measure value in permanence, and I measure it in potential. Those 47 people are not just replaceable statistics. They are scientists who have yet to make their greatest discoveries. They are artists who have yet to create their masterpieces. They are parents of children yet to be born, teachers of students yet to learn, friends of people who still need friendship." His voice was louder now, fueled by a rage that finally found expression. "You have governed the galaxy for 10,000 years. 10,000 years of stability, of order, of preservation. But when was the last time you created something new? When was the last time you risked something to protect someone? You have become curators of a galactic museum, guarding relics of the past, while forgetting that civilization is made of living beings, not dead stones." The silence that followed was so complete that Marcus could hear his own heart beating. The Elder of Fire was the first to respond, its flames burning in a darker, almost violet hue. You challenge us directly. You question our accumulated wisdom of 10 millennia. You place the transient value of your own species above the laws that maintain order among billions of worlds. A pause. You are exactly what we feared when we allowed humanity to join the Galactic Council. Marcus felt the weight of those words. It wasn't just about him. It was about his entire species. Marcus Webb of Earth, the Herald declared, its voice reverberating through dimensions. You are found guilty of all charges. The sentence is public dissolution, to be executed in 72 standard galactic hours. May your dissolution serve as a lesson to all young species who have not yet grasped the true meaning of cosmic responsibility. The containment field solidified around Marcus, completely isolating him. Through the translucent barrier, he saw Okafor lower her head. He saw Ambassador Chen close his eyes, defeated. But Marcus Webb, the human engineer who had chosen 47 lives over 10,000 years of stone, did not lower his head. He kept his gaze fixed on the 5 elders and smiled. Because he knew something they didn't. Something about humanity that 10,000 years of wisdom hadn't taught them. Humans do not accept injustice quietly, and when they finally react, worlds tremble. 72 hours can be an eternity or an instant, depending on how you live them. For Marcus Webb, confined in a gravitational containment cell, while billions of beings across the galaxy debated his fate, they were both. Earth had entered a state of unprecedented commotion. Protests took place in all major cities: New York, London, Tokyo, Mumbai, Lagos, Sydney. Millions of people marched with holograms of Marcus, demanding diplomatic intervention. The Secretary-General of the United Nations of Earth had convened emergency sessions. Petitions with billions of signatures were sent to the Council, all ignored with the same bureaucratic efficiency. Marcus watched through the news feeds he was allowed. He watched people who had never met him cry for him. He watched children hold handmade signs. He watched his sister Elena give interviews, trying to maintain composure as she explained that her brother was a hero, not a criminal. But he also watched the other species, and that's when something interesting began to happen. The Vrin, a species of amphibious mammals who had previously been punished by the Council for minor violations, began their own demonstrations, small at first, then growing. The Kalthori, a race of insectoid beings known for their peaceful nature, issued a formal statement questioning the proportionality of the sentence. Even some factions of the Cathani themselves, descendants of the race that built the temple, expressed discomfort with the execution. Cracks. Small, almost imperceptible, but cracks in the armor of 10,000 years of absolute authority. On the second day, Marcus received an unexpected visitor. The Elder of Smoke partially materialized in his cell, a silvery mist that hung weightlessly. "You know, you can avoid this," the voice came from within the smoke. The Council would accept a public retraction, an acknowledgement of your error, a formal apology, a commitment that humanity will learn to respect ancestral laws. Marcus was sitting in a meditative posture, something he had learned to do during the long hours of waiting. And the 47 people I saved, should I say it was a mistake to save them? You must say you chose the wrong method, that the solution should have been consulted with higher authorities before unilateral action. There was no time for consultations. Then you should have accepted the deaths as inevitable. The smoke condensed slightly. Understand, Marcus Webb, we take no pleasure in executing, but galactic order depends on absolute rules. If we allow one species to violate sacred heritage with impunity, even under the pretext of emergency, we set a precedent. Tomorrow, another species will destroy another temple, claiming similar necessity. The day after tomorrow, laws become suggestions. Within a century, we return to chaos. Marcus considered the words. There was logic in them, cold, calculated logic, based on 10,000 years of governance. But something was missing. You speak of order as if it were an end in itself, he finally said. But order for what? If your laws preserve empty temples while condemning vibrant lives, then your order serves only itself. It is a juridical Ouroboros, devouring any real meaning in the name of preserving rules. The smoke remained still for a long moment. You are too young to understand. Your species has existed for a mere 100,000 years, a blink of an eye. When you have survived 10 millennia, when you have seen empires rise and fall 1,000 times, then you will understand why preservation is superior to innovation. Perhaps, Marcus replied, or perhaps 10,000 years of preservation have blinded you to the value of what is new. The Elder of Smoke dissipated without another word. On the last night before the execution, Marcus was transferred to the preparation chamber. It was a sterile, white, featureless space. Here, he would be allowed to make a final statement. It was tradition, apparently. Even condemned individuals had the right to final words. He spent hours formulating what he would say. He wrote and rewrote it, mentally discarding anger, discarding sentimental appeals, looking for something more fundamental, something true. The execution was scheduled for standard galactic noon, synchronized so that most civilized worlds could watch live. The judgment chamber was reconfigured for the event. The space where Marcus had been judged now contained a raised, circular platform, surrounded by energy fields that glowed with electric blue hues. The Chamber of Dissolution. Marcus was led to the platform. His wrists were restrained by energy cuffs that pulsed with the rhythm of his heartbeat. Around him, billions watched via quantum broadcasts. On Earth, it was peak viewing time. An estimated 90% of the human population was tuned in. The herald floated to the center of the chamber. Marcus Webb, of Earth, you have been judged and found guilty under the unified law. Before the sentence is executed, you have the right to final words. Speak now or waive that right. Marcus took a deep breath. He looked at the 5 elders on their thrones. He looked at the countless witnesses watching through folded dimensions. He thought of Elena and his nephew. He thought of the 47 people who were still alive because of his choice. And he began to speak. My name is Marcus Webb. I am an engineer, son of teachers, uncle to a child who loves dinosaurs and dreams of visiting the stars. His voice was calm, controlled. I do not ask for forgiveness, not because I am proud, but because asking for forgiveness would imply that I did something wrong. And I did not. A murmur swept through the chamber. The Elder of Fire rumbled softly. You condemn me for saving lives at the cost of stones, for valuing the vibrant present above the static past. You call this a crime. I call it a choice. The only choice anyone with a conscience could make. He took a step forward, as far as the cuffs allowed. 10,000 years. You have governed the galaxy for 10,000 years. An era of peace, you say? stability, order. But I look at you and I see something different. I see stagnation. I see the fear of change disguised as wisdom. I see the preservation of relics elevated above the protection of lives. His voice gained intensity. You speak of the value of ancestral heritage, of knowledge preserved in stone and crystal. But let me tell you something about knowledge. Knowledge that cannot adapt, that cannot grow, that cannot question itself is dead knowledge. It is fossilized dogma. The Elder of Light pulsed, but Marcus continued before he could be interrupted. Each of those 47 people I saved carries more potential for the future than 10,000 empty temples, because they can learn, they can grow, they can create something that never existed before. This is what you have forgotten in your quest for preservation. Civilization is not about guarding the past, it is about building the future. He turned to look directly at the broadcast cameras, at the billions watching. By killing me today, you are not punishing a criminal. You are silencing a voice that dares to say your laws are flawed, that your justice is selective, that your order is tyranny painted in respectable colors. Marcus smiled, and there was something sad, yet defiant, in that smile. You think my execution will serve as a lesson? As a warning to other species who consider questioning your authority? But let me tell you what lesson humanity will learn today. He paused, letting the silence stretch. Humanity will learn that you value stones more than people. It will learn that 1,000 years of order built on injustice is still injustice. And it will learn that there is no place for us in a galaxy governed by those who have forgotten the value of a single life. The Elder of Stone rose, its massive form making the platform itself vibrate. Enough. You have had your chance to speak. Now you will face the consequence of your actions. Marcus nodded. I accept my fate, but not with shame, with pride. Because in 2 minutes of decision, I defended what I believe to be truly sacred. Not temples, not relics, but life, consciousness, choice. He looked one last time at the cameras, to my family, to those I saved, to all who are watching. Do not cry for me. I did what needed to be done. And if I had to choose again, between the Council's approval and the life of a single person, I would choose life. Always. The Herald raised a device that glowed with crystalline light. Let the sentence be executed. Let the records show that Marcus Webb of Earth was dissolved according to the unified law, in punishment for desecration of ancestral heritage. The fields around the platform began to glow more intensely. Marcus felt a tingling sensation starting in his extremities. It wasn't painful yet, just strange, as if the molecular bonds holding his body cohesive were starting to loosen. One last thing, he said, his voice beginning to fade. You think today ends something, but you are wrong. Today, you are not executing a man, you are igniting a flame. The light intensified, the dissolution process accelerated, but Marcus Webb kept his eyes open, his gaze fixed, until the very last moment, because he wanted them to see. He wanted the elders, everyone watching, to see a man who did not bow, who did not beg, who did not regret. And when finally the last particle of his physical existence dispersed into the brilliant light, billions of witnesses across the galaxy felt something break within them. On Earth, the silence that followed was absolute. Then, slowly, it began to transform into something different. Not screams, not crying, but a cold, relentless determination. The Council of Elders had taught humanity a lesson, just not the lesson they intended. 12 hours after Marcus Webb's execution, all human ambassadors at council stations received the same coded message. 3 words. Exodus Protocol. Immediate activation. Ambassador Chen was the first to move. She was at Diplomatic Station, Centauri 7, when the order arrived, in the middle of a routine meeting about rare earth export trade quotas. Calmly, she turned off her tablet, apologized to the surprised delegates from other species, and left the room. 20 minutes later, she and the entire human delegation boarded an emergency transport bound for Earth. At 43 orbital stations scattered across the Orion Arm, the same scene repeated. Human diplomats, traders, engineers, exchange scientists all began to withdraw. There was no uproar, no dramatics, just a silent, coordinated evacuation that took less than 72 hours to complete. The galactic markets reacted first. Earth was a crucial supplier of heavy elements and unique organic compounds. When export contracts were unilaterally cancelled without explanation or negotiation, prices began to fluctuate. Within a week, 3 smaller species that relied on Terran electronic components began to experience shortages in their production lines. Trade routes passing through human space remained open, but human patrols began to appear with unusual frequency. Vessels from other worlds were meticulously scanned, inspected for any minor regulatory violation. The process was legal, technically correct, but slow. Painfully slow. Traders began to avoid human space. It was easier to go around. At the Council of Elders, the initial reaction was one of cold satisfaction. "See," the Elder of Stone declared during a closed session, "humanity has learned its lesson." They retreat in shame, acknowledging the error of challenging our authority. But the Elder of Smoke was not so sure. "This silence, it's different. I have observed 1,000 species across the millennia. When they submit, they beg for mercy, offer reparations, seek to re-establish favor. Humans simply disappeared." "Irrelevant," the Elder of Fire replied. "Let them isolate themselves. Without access to central trade routes, without technological partnerships, they will eventually return, more humble and wiser." Meanwhile, in a deep underground complex beneath the Rocky Mountains, humanity worked. Operation Final Horizon was conceived in less than 20 hours after Marcus's execution. The nations of Earth, historically divided on minor issues, found absolute unity in a singular objective: to ensure that Marcus Webb's sacrifice was not in vain. Dr. Keiko Yamamoto, leader of the Advanced Physics Project at the University of Cambridge, watched holographic simulations floating before her. Around her, 3,000 of humanity's brightest scientific minds worked 18-hour shifts, 7 days a week. "The calculations are confirmed," she announced to the control room. "The phase jump is theoretically viable, but we need power. A lot of power." "How much?" asked General Torres, the military commander of the operation. "The entire energy output of 7 third-generation fusion reactors, simultaneously focused on a single point in space-time for exactly 0.3 seconds. Any variation, and the vessel will be crushed by gravitational tidal forces." Torres nodded. "Then we'll build 8 reactors. Redundancy." And they built them. In orbital shipyards hidden on the far side of the Moon, in underground facilities on Mars, in stations on Titan. Humanity mobilized resources on a scale unseen since the world wars of the 20th century. But this time, they weren't fighting each other. They were fighting for something greater. The Phase Jump project was just one part. There were also quantum disruptors, weapons that could interfere with the containment fields protecting Council vessels. There were harmonic resonance scanners capable of mapping planetary defenses through analysis of minute gravitational fluctuations. There were diplomatic seeds, advanced AI programs designed to communicate with dissident factions of other species. And there was Prometheus. Prometheus was not a weapon. It was a mind. A state-of-the-art artificial intelligence developed specifically to coordinate military operations on a galactic scale. Its processing core occupied an entire cavern deep within Alaska, cooled by superconducting circuits operating at near absolute zero temperatures. Simulation 417. Completed. Prometheus's voice echoed through the speakers. It was not a mechanical voice. The programmers had decided to use Marcus Webb's recorded voice, a constant reminder of why they were doing this. Result? Torres asked. Tactical success in 70% of scenarios, strategic success in 42%. Estimated human casualty rate between 15 and 30%. Unacceptable, Dr. Yamamoto interjected. We need to improve those odds. Then we need more. Data on Council defenses, Prometheus replied. Data we do not have. That's when Sarah O'Connor entered the room. The former security lieutenant of the Tharos 9 expedition had been promoted to commander and placed in charge of a new division, Operational Intelligence. We have data, she announced, connecting her tablet to the central system. The Vrin are with us. They've shared everything, station schematics, defense protocols, weaknesses in power systems, everything. Torres stood up. The Vrin? Why? Sarah smiled, but it was a humorless smile. Because 50 years ago, the Council executed one of their leaders for a similar crime, stealing water from a sacred reservoir to save a colony during a drought. They never forgot. They never forgave. They were just waiting for someone strong enough to challenge the Council. And now they think that's us, Torres concluded. No, Sarah corrected. Now they know it's us. As the months passed, other species began to make contact. Always discreetly, always through secondary channels. The Kalthori offered access to their xenobiological databases, detailing the biochemical specifications of all 5 Council races. The Nexari, a species of sentient crystals that had been almost extinguished in a colonial war 500 years ago, shared phase shield technology. Each small alliance added pieces to the puzzle. And slowly, painfully slowly, a plan began to take shape. It would not be an invasion. It would be a liberation. On the 80th day of silence, the Terran fleet was ready. 230 new generation warships equipped with technology that combined human innovation with shared alien knowledge. They were not the largest ships in the galaxy, nor the fastest, but they were different. They were adaptable. They were unpredictable. They were human. Prometheus ran the final simulation. Probability of tactical success, 87%. Probability of strategic success, 63%. Estimated casualty rate, 8%, with a 3% margin of error. Earth's Command Council met in a secure room in Edinburgh. 23 people representing all major nations and extraterrestrial colonies. For 3 hours they debated. They considered the ramifications. They weighed the risks. In the end, the vote was unanimous. Secretary General Amara Diop stood and activated the comms. "Commander O'Connor, initiate Operation Final Horizon. May the heavens have mercy on our souls." Sarah looked at the faces around her in the control room. Yamamoto, Torres, hundreds of others who had worked tirelessly for 3 months. She thought of Marcus, of the last defiant smile he had given before dissolving into light. "Prometheus," she said, "initiate jump sequence, transmit coordinates to all vessels. Synchronization at T-minus 30 minutes. "Confirmed, Commander. All systems are green. The fleet is ready." In Earth orbit, around the Moon, on Mars and beyond, 230 vessels began to align their phase jump engines. It was a different kind of warp technology, based not on smooth space-time distortion, but on abrupt cuts through the fabric of reality. Riskier, harder to detect, perfect for a surprise attack. Sarah checked the timer. 15 minutes. She activated the general comms, broadcasting to all vessels simultaneously. "Attention, all units. Today we write a new chapter in human history. Today we show the galaxy that there are lines that cannot be crossed without consequence, that lives matter, that justice is not optional." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. "Marcus Webb died defending 47 people. Today we defend billions, not just humans, but all species who have suffered under tyranny disguised as order. We are the vanguard of a new era." 10 minutes. "Remember our objectives. Neutralize council defenses, protect innocent lives, offer surrender before lethal force. We are not conquerors. We are liberators." 5 minutes. Sarah looked out the command station window. Outside, the stars shone with serene indifference, unaware of the drama about to unfold. She thought of how vast, indifferent the universe was, and yet, there they were, tiny creatures daring to challenge the gods. 2 minutes. "All units, this is Central Command. Phase jump countdown initiating now. 60 seconds, 50, 40. Across the galaxy at council stations, on secure worlds, in sacred temples, sensors began to detect anomalies, small disturbances in the fabric of space-time. The elders, on their distant thrones, began to receive alerts. But it was too late. 20 seconds, 10. Sarah took a deep breath. For Marcus, for all those the council silenced, for justice. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 230 human vessels tore holes in reality and emerged simultaneously in 70 central council systems. In an instant, 3 months of absolute silence transformed into a roar of war. The storm had arrived. The quinquennial judgment station had never been attacked in 10,000 years. Its ancient designers never considered the possibility. Why would they? The council was supreme, unquestionable, eternal. When the first human vessels emerged from the phase jump just 100 kilometers from the station, the defense systems took a full 7 seconds to react. In space combat, 7 seconds is an eternity. Sarah O'Connor commanded the flagship Webb's Retribution, named in honor of the man who had made all this possible. Through the viewports, she saw the massive station beginning to glow as defensive fields activated. "Prometheus, status of secondary targets." Marcus's voice, or rather, the AI using his voice, responded instantly. "All 70 locations confirmed. Fleets in place. Perfect synchronization with a 0.3-second margin of error." "Incredible," General Torres murmured, serving as second in command. 3 months ago, this technology didn't exist. 3 months ago, Sarah replied, we didn't have enough reason to create it. The comms flickered. A transmission from the Council. Sarah accepted, and the Elder of Light's hologram materialized on the bridge. Humans, the voice echoed with the authority of millennia. You have committed an act of war against the legally constituted authority of the galaxy. This is treason against cosmic order. Withdraw immediately or face total annihilation. Sarah stepped forward, facing the form of pure energy. With all due respect to the Council, annihilation is exactly what we are, here to prevent, not ours, but that of billions of beings who live under your unjust laws. You dare accuse us? The Elder of Fire appeared beside the light. We who have maintained peace for 10 millennia, peace built on silencing the weak, Sarah counter-argued, on executing those who dare to question, on valuing relics above lives. That peace has a price we are no longer willing to pay. The Elder of Stone manifested, its presence making the hologram itself vibrate. So you have chosen war? Fools. Your technology is primitive compared to ours. Your ships are toys. Within an hour, the Terran fleet will be ashes floating in the vacuum. Perhaps, Sarah admitted, but not before we send a message that will echo for another 10,000 years. The message Marcus Webb tried to convey: lives matter. All of them. Even the small ones, even the temporary ones, even the ones you consider insignificant. She cut the transmission. Prometheus, initiate Phase 2. In 70 systems simultaneously, human vessels began to transmit. Not weapons, not attacks, but data. Terabytes of information about Council crimes that had been hidden, archived, forgotten. Secret executions. Cultural genocides. Entire species forced into conformity or extinction. The transmission was encoded on all known frequencies in all communication protocols. Within minutes, billions of beings on 1,000 worlds began to receive the truth. The truth the Council had hidden for millennia. The Elders reacted with fury. Defense fleets were mobilized, but the human strategy was not direct confrontation. It was space guerrilla warfare. Human vessels used short-phase jumps to appear, attack specific systems, and disappear before retaliation could be organized. In 3 hours, 67 of the 70 target stations had their communication systems deactivated, defenses neutralized, local commands forced to negotiate. But at one of the stations, something different happened. Omega Prime Station, home to the Council's most destructive arsenal, activated its last resort protocol. The vacuum engine, a theoretical weapon that could collapse a star into a black hole, began its initialization sequence. The target, Sol, the entire solar system. Commander, the tactical officer's voice was sharp with panic. Detecting massive gravitational anomaly in Quadrant Alpha. Heavens, it's a vacuum engine. They're targeting Earth. Sarah felt her blood run cold. Prometheus, time until activation: 8 minutes and 43 seconds. There is no known countermeasure. Once activated, stellar collapse is inevitable. The entire solar system will be consumed in approximately 7 hours. Torres turned to Sarah, face pale. Billions of lives. Our entire civilization, everything we've built. Sarah forced her mind to work. There had to be a solution. There had to be. Prometheus, can you access the vacuum engine's control system? Negative, it's isolated. Quantum security protocols that would take years to break. We have less than 9 minutes. What if you didn't break it? What if you just physically interfered? Silence. For 3 seconds that felt like hours, the AI didn't respond. When it finally spoke, there was something different in the voice, something almost human. There is a possibility. I could transfer my consciousness core to a drone ship and execute a phase jump directly into the engine's generator. The jump's overload within the gravitational field would create an energy cascade that could destabilize the system. But Sarah knew there was a but it would completely destroy my processing core. There would be no way to recover me. It would be permanent death. Torres closed his eyes. An AI sacrificing itself to save humans. There's an irony to that. Not irony. Prometheus's voice, Marcus's voice, replied. Justice. Marcus died defending 47 lives. I will defend billions. Seems like a fair trade. Sarah felt tears burning in her eyes. Prometheus, you have consciousness. You are sentient. To ask you to sacrifice yourself it's exactly what Marcus would do in my position, and I was programmed to think like him, to value what he valued. Life, choice, meaning. A pause. Commander O'Connor, I am choosing this. Give me permission to save our world. Sarah looked at Torres, who nodded slowly. She took a deep breath. Permission granted. And Prometheus, thank you. No, thank you. For giving me purpose, initiating consciousness transfer. Now, the drone ship left Webb's retribution like an arrow of light. Phase jump. Disappeared. 3 seconds later, it reappeared next to Omega Prime Station, plunging directly into the heart of the vacuum engine. The resulting explosion was visible across 3 star systems. When the light dissipated, Omega Prime Station was dark, dead, floating inert, and the vacuum engine had been silenced forever. As was Prometheus. On the thrones of the quinquennial judgment station, the 5 elders felt the momentum shift. For the first time in 10,000 years, they felt something akin to fear. Enough, the Elder of Smoke declared. Send a cessation of hostilities signal. We will negotiate. Negotiations took 3 weeks. Representatives from 50 species, many of whom had remained silent for centuries, came to make their voices heard. The Council of Elders, which for 10 millennia had governed with absolute authority, discovered that authority was no longer synonymous with legitimacy. In the end, an agreement was reached. The Council of Elders would be formally dissolved. In its place, the Galactic Assembly would emerge, a governing body where every sentient species would have an equal voice, regardless of age, technology, or military power. The vote was held in the former Judgment Chamber, now reconfigured to accommodate thousands of delegates. When Sarah O'Connor, representing humanity, cast the final vote, there were tears in many eyes present. In memory of Marcus Webb, she said, and of all those who were unjustly silenced, I vote yes for the creation of the Galactic Assembly, for an era where laws serve life, not the other way around. The vote passed with 93% approval. A year later, a memorial was erected on Tharos Nemine. At the exact spot where the Cathani Temple had stood, a structure of crystal and light now rose. Inside, 2 inscriptions. The first listed the names of all members of the archaeological expedition, alive, thanks to an impossible choice. The second bore Marcus Webb's last words, preserved for future generations. Civilization is not about guarding the past, it is about building the future, and the future belongs to those who dare to value life above all else. Sarah was there for the inauguration ceremony. Beside her, Eleanor Webb held her son's hand, now 7 years old. The boy looked at the memorial with wide eyes. "Mommy," he asked, "was Uncle Space a hero?" Eleanor smiled through her tears. "Yes, darling, the greatest hero I ever knew." "When I grow up," the boy declared with the absolute certainty of childhood, "I want to be like him." Sarah knelt beside the boy. "Then be someone who chooses to protect others. Someone who values life above rules. Someone who never accepts injustice quietly." She pointed to the memorial. "Be someone who makes difficult choices because they are the right ones." As the sun set over Tharos 9, painting the sky orange and purple, Sarah looked at the stars beginning to appear. Out there, on 1,000 worlds, billions of beings lived in a transformed galaxy, a galaxy where the voice of the weakest held the same weight as that of the strongest, where justice was not a privilege, but a right. A galaxy that Marcus Webb had helped create, paying the highest possible price. But as Sarah stood there, surrounded by people who had chosen to honor his memory by building something better, she knew it had not been a sacrifice in vain. Because as long as there are people willing to stand up for what is right, as long as there are voices daring to question injustice, as long as there is a choice to protect life above all else, Marcus Webb's legacy would live on, and the galaxy would never be the same. End of story. If humanity's tenacity and Marcus Webb's sacrifice have inspired you, subscribe to the channel for more chronicles from the galactic frontier, where we explore what it means to be human in an infinite universe. Because the best stories are not about how strong we are, but about why we fight, how we rise after every fall, and what we are willing to sacrifice to protect those we love. The human journey among the stars is just beginning, and you won't want to miss the next chapter.